The first time I saw Reyes, she was eating sand. Not metaphorically. Literally. Face first into the Kandahar dirt, pack on her back, rifle pinned under her arm, because Sergeant Doyle had just yanked her kit strap mid-stride and dropped her like a sack of wet concrete in front of the entire forward operating base. Nobody helped her up. That was the rule. You get dropped, you get up. You stay down, you're already gone. I watched from the shade of the motor pool, cleaning sand out of my bolt carrier with a toothbrush that had seen better years, wondering how long this one would last. We'd had 4 new combat role women rotated through FOB Greystone in 18 months. 2 requested reassignment inside the first week. 1 cried in the latrine on her 3rd day and I never told anyone because it wasn't my business. The 4th one, Specialist Holloway, she'd made it 4 months before an IED near Highway 1 made the decision for everyone. So yeah. I watched Reyes eat sand. She pushed up on one hand. Spit. Didn't wipe her face. Just stood, resettled her pack like she was adjusting luggage on a carousel, and kept walking. Nobody clapped. FOB Greystone was not a clapping kind of place. My name is Corporal Darius Webb, 24 years old, 3rd deployment, 6 months left on this one, originally from Macon, Georgia, where my mother still made biscuits every Sunday for a son who hadn't sat at her table in 2 years. I'm telling you that not because it matters to the story but because it's the kind of thing you hold onto out here. The specific smell of someone's specific kitchen. The texture of a thing that isn't sand. Everything here is sand. Reyes got assigned to 2nd Squad, which was my squad, which meant she got Doyle as a team leader, a fact that none of us envied. Sergeant First Class Marcus Doyle was not cruel the way some NCOs are cruel, casually and for entertainment. He was cruel the way a grindstone is cruel, constant, indifferent, productive. He'd ground down 4 of us into something useful. He'd ground down 2 of us into transfers. He approached Reyes the way he approached every new soldier, with the assumption that they were garbage until proven otherwise, and, even then, garbage on a good day. Her full name was Specialist Elena Reyes. 22. Puerto Rican from the Bronx, combat medic cross-trained for direct action, 8 months of language training, Pashto and Dari both. On paper she was exactly what our undermanned, overworked FOB needed. On the ground she was the new girl with sand in her teeth and 48 hours to convince 9 men she wasn't a liability. She didn't try to convince anyone. That was the first thing I noticed. She didn't laugh extra hard at jokes she didn't find funny. Didn't offer to do coffee runs or pull extra cleaning detail to buy goodwill. She asked questions that were operational. Where does 2nd Squad position on the northwest wall during a mortar attack? What's the comms protocol if we lose the primary radio? Who carries the trauma kit for the team? And she asked them of me, specifically, because I was the one who'd made the mistake of making eye contact in the chow line her first evening. Why me? I asked. Because everyone else looked away. She said it without resentment. Just observation. People who look away are either scared of something or they're protecting information. You looked away and, then, looked back. That means you're just waiting to be asked. I blinked at her for a solid 3 seconds. The northwest wall, I said. Prone position behind the HESCO barriers. But Doyle likes a stagger, so you go low, Castillo goes high. I take the angle on the thank you, she said, and pulled out an actual pocket notebook, the kind with a rubber band around it, and started writing. I watched her write and thought, she's either going to be excellent or she's going to be dead, and I genuinely don't know which. The first week she was with us, nothing happened. That's not nothing. On FOB Greystone, nothing happening was its own kind of event, like a held breath that the whole base was collectively refusing to release. Intelligence had flagged increased movement in the Arghandab Valley. Drone footage had picked up what looked like a weapons cache transfer near the village of Sharisafa, 8 clicks out. JTAC had been getting sporadic radio contacts that didn't match any friendly frequencies. The waiting was worse than the thing itself. I'd learned that on my first deployment. The second deployment confirmed it. Out here on the third, I'd stopped arguing with it and started treating it like weather. Reyes treated it like a diagnostic problem. She spent the first week running her own self-assessment. That's the only way I can describe it. PT at 0430 every morning before mandatory formation, in the dark, alone, with a headlamp and a route she'd paced off around the interior perimeter. She logged her times in that pocket notebook. She ran the trauma kit twice, inventoried it item by item, and found a tourniquet that had been logged but was actually expired, a discrepancy that made Doyle's jaw do something complicated when she reported it. He didn't thank her. He replaced the tourniquet and didn't mention it again. But I saw his jaw do the thing. On day 6 she sat down next to me during night watch, 2 in the morning, the cold that descends on the desert like someone pulling a blanket, the kind of cold that seems impossible given that by noon you'd fry an egg on the Hesco, and she looked out at the dark perimeter and said, "Webb. Yeah. When it goes bad out here, how fast does it go bad?" I thought about Holloway. I thought about a morning 11 months ago, a road that looked like every other road, a dog that had been walking along the verge and then just wasn't, and then the concussion that arrived without a sound first, just the pressure. "Fast enough," I said. She nodded. "Wrote something in the notebook." "Stop writing in that thing," I said. "It's 2 in the morning. Sleep is for, if you say sleep is for the weak I will throw you off this wall." She didn't say it. But she almost smiled. First time I'd seen that. It didn't fix anything. It didn't make her one of us. But it was something, and something was what we had. The night it all changed started like every other night, badly. Generator trouble at 2100 knocked out half the base lighting, which put Doyle in the specific flavor of bad mood that expressed itself through very quiet, very deliberate instruction giving, each sentence arriving like a staple gun. Castillo had tweaked his ankle on a collapsed section of catwalk and was limping in a way he was pretending he wasn't. Martinez had gotten word from home, something about his kid, his ex, a custody thing, and had been carrying it around like a stone behind his eyes all day. So second squad was already frayed before the radio crackled. I was lacing my boots, which was a thing I did when I needed my hands occupied and my head quiet, the specific, tactile, left of the laces, muscle memory from somewhere before all of this. The radio was on the table 3 feet away, volume low, and the voice that came through it was not one of ours. It wasn't supposed to be on our frequency. Doyle was across the room in 2 steps, headset up, and his face did something I'd never seen it do in 18 months of watching Doyle's face for information about how bad things were about to get. It went still. Not blank. Still. Like a photograph of a man who has just recalculated everything. He set the headset down. Looked at all of us in one sweep. "We've got a Navy SEAL team," he said, "on the wrong side of a firefight, 5 clicks east, and they're running out of both. Both. Time and men." I looked at my laces. Left, right, left. Already tied. Reyes was standing up before Doyle finished the sentence, trauma kit in hand, and I thought, excellent or dead. Still don't know. Still didn't. We mounted up in 11 minutes. 11 minutes from radio contact to 4 vehicles rolling through the gate, which was not a record for second squad but was close, considering Castillo's ankle and the generator still being down and Martinez having to be spoken to very directly by Doyle for approximately 4 of those 11 minutes, spoken to in that quiet, staple gun way before the stone behind his eyes moved aside and the soldier came back. I was in the second vehicle, right rear, facing backward through the open window. Desert dark is its own specific dark, not the dark of a room with the lights off but something with texture, the shadow of mountains that you feel more than see, the particular absence that means open ground, the way the headlights turned the road into a thing that existed only 15 meters at a time and then stopped. Reyes was across from me. She had her trauma kit open on her knees, doing one last inventory by touch and headlamp in the vehicle's lurch and sway, fingers moving through it the way a musician's fingers move through scales. Not nervous. Preparing. "You ever done a case vac under fire?" I asked. "Simulation," she said. "Real bodies bleed different than simulation bodies." "I know that. I'm not trying to scare you. I know that too." She closed the kit. "You're trying to tell me something useful without saying it directly, and I'm telling you I hear it." The vehicle hit a rut. We both grabbed the bar above the window. Martinez, up front in the passenger seat, had his rifle across his lap and his jaw set in that direction that had nothing to do with where we were going. The radio in the vehicle kept up a low feed of traffic. Doyle in the lead truck coordinating with battalion, the SEAL team's own comms operator giving sporadic position updates in a voice that was professional and measured in the specific way that means the person using it is working very hard to keep it that way. Their team leader was down. Not dead. Down. Gunshot, upper left torso, exit wound confirmed, but they were suppressed in a dried riverbed with 3 functioning shooters and a man they couldn't move, couldn't leave, and couldn't protect from 3 directions at once. The enemy, a combined force, more than a dozen, intel said, possibly more, had taken a high position on a ridgeline to the north and a building complex to the east. Crossfire. The kind that turns cover into a geometry problem with no solution. Doyle's plan, and I'm telling you this because it matters for what Reyes did, was a hammer and anvil. Second vehicle peels left, creates suppressive fire on the ridgeline from an angle they can't cover. Lead vehicle drives the eastern road hard, pops the building complex, collapses their right flank. Meanwhile, 2 men, himself and 1 other, go for the riverbed, get the SEAL team out. Webb, Doyle said on the vehicle channel, "You're with me. Foot movement to the extraction point. 2 minutes from our breach." I looked at Reyes. She was already looking at me. "He needs a medic," she said. Not arguing. Stating. "He's got Doyle. Doyle is not a medic." Which was true. Doyle's combat lifesaver training was 11 years old and his own description of it was, "I can slow the bleeding until the real people show up." The SEAL team leader had an exit wound, clean, maybe, but exit wounds lie. The real damage is what you can't see, what's happening in the chest cavity, what the lung is doing, whether the blood pressure is dropping in the quiet way that looks like stability and is actually collapse. She knew all of that. I could tell she knew it because she wasn't explaining it to me. She was just looking at me. I keyed the radio. "Sergeant Doyle. Webb. Request to swap my slot with Reyes. She's the medic. He needs a medic." Silence. 3 full seconds of it, which in a vehicle moving at speed toward a firefight is not a small amount of time. "Reyes," Doyle said. "Sergeant. You go down, there's no one to pull you. You understand that?" "I understand, Sergeant." Another second. "You'd better be as good as your paperwork." She didn't answer that. Which was, I realized, exactly the right move. The firefight, when we hit it, was everything and nothing at once. Everything, the noise of it was a physical thing, not just sound but concussion, the specific crack and thump that means you're inside the range of the guns and not outside it, the way your body responds before your brain does, something animal and unthinking that drops your center of gravity and tightens everything. Nothing, because in the dark, broken only by muzzle flash and tracer and the one good vehicle light that hadn't been shot out yet, you don't see a battle. You see your immediate 11 feet. The rock behind Castillo. The angle of Martinez's barrel. The direction of the bad sound versus the slightly less bad sound. I was on the ridgeline suppression vehicle. Left flank. The PKM up on that ridge was working a fixed line, which meant the gunner was either disciplined or scared, and disciplined is the worst one because scared gunners make mistakes and disciplined ones don't. We put 2 saw bursts up the slope in a bracketing pattern, walked the fire left, heard the PKM stutter and pause, not stop, pause, and then Martinez was up and moving, pushing the angle, and I was covering him because that's what you do when Martinez is moving, you make sure nothing else is moving. I didn't see Reyes go into the riverbed. I found out later. I'll tell it the way Specialist Okonkwo told it to me, 3 days after, because he was in the lead vehicle and he saw the whole thing from 40 meters out. Doyle breached the riverbed from the north end. The SEAL team, 3 men still up, 1 down, had been holding for 22 minutes by then. 22 minutes under crossfire in a position 12 meters wide and maybe 4 meters deep, which is not a position, it's a grave you're sharing with 3 other people and hoping it stays temporary. Their comms operator, a chief petty officer named, as best as I ever reconstructed, Garrett, was the one who saw Doyle and Reyes come in low along the bank. He told his guys. Or tried to. One of them was running on adrenaline and a hair trigger, and, when a shape appeared at the rim of the riverbed from an unexpected angle, he brought his rifle up. Reyes came in under the barrel. Not ducked and scrambled. Came in low and fast, belly to the earth, already moving to the man on the ground before the SEAL with the rifle had fully processed she was friendly. She said, "Medic, friendly, coming to your casualty," in a flat, even voice that left no room for argument or confusion, the kind of voice that overrides panic because it sounds like someone who has no time for yours. The SEAL she was moving to, their team leader, later identified as Senior Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rains, was conscious. This was the part Okonkwo's voice went quiet on when he told me. Rains was conscious, and he was a senior chief with what had to be 15, 16 years in, and he had 3 guys he was responsible for in a hole they might not get out of, and a woman he'd never seen before had just slid in next to him with a trauma kit and started cutting his kit off him. He grabbed her wrist. "I've got it," she said. He didn't let go. "Senior Chief." Her voice, Okonkwo said, was like a door closing. "Final. I need to assess your chest. You can be angry at me later. Let go." He let go. What she found when she got his kit off, the exit wound was not clean. The round had clipped the lower lobe of the left lung. She could hear it in his breath, the specific wet quality that means air is going somewhere it shouldn't. Not full pneumothorax. Not yet. But the needle decompression she'd have to do in the next 8 minutes had a window that was closing. She had 8 minutes. She had, by her own later account, 9 items in her trauma kit that she could find by touch alone. The riverbed was under active fire. She did the decompression in the 4th minute. And I want to be careful here because there's a version of this story where that sentence is the whole story, the cinematic moment, the thing that gets told at the bar and grows into something it wasn't. But the truth is that 4 minutes in a riverbed while people are trying to kill you is not dramatic in the way movies are dramatic. It's specific. It's her left hand holding pressure while her right hand locates the landmark on the chest wall. It's the sound of the needle going in and the sound that changes in his breathing after, which is not a movie sound. It's barely audible over the gunfire, but she heard it. It's his hand, which had grabbed her wrist, now just resting on the ground next to her, open. She told me later he said something. I asked what. She said she didn't hear it over the firefight. I think she heard it. Meanwhile, the PKM on the ridgeline came back online. I want to be honest, I was scared. Not in the way that freezes you don't get to be frozen, there's too much to do, but in the way that makes everything very sharp and very stupid at the same time, where you're thinking in complete sentences about things that have no business being complete sentences. I was thinking, the soil here smells like old chalk. I was thinking, my left boot has a hot spot on the heel where the leather bunched 2 days ago. I was thinking all of this while working the M4 on an angle up the slope, covering Martinez, who had pushed close enough to the ridge base that he was inside the PKM's minimum depression, which was either brilliant tactics or dumb luck, and Martinez would tell you one thing and I'd tell you the other. Castillo, bad ankle and all, was running calm relay. His voice in my earpiece was steady, steadier than the situation warranted, but Castillo had been raised Catholic and I always thought the rosary he mumbled on the way into anything was doing some kind of structural work on his nerves. The Eastern Building Complex, that was Doyle's other team. I couldn't see it. I could hear it in the rhythm of the fire, the way the enemy's crossfire started to lose its coordination when their right flank got pressure. A firefight has a rhythm, and when you're in one you stop hearing individual shots and start feeling the pattern. The pattern was changing. Then, Doyle's voice on the channel. We have the package. Coming out north. Cover the north bank. Package. Rains. Moving. I saw them come out of the riverbed. Doyle on one side, one of the SEAL team on the other, Rains between them, upright, walking, one hand pressed to his own chest, moving with the specific concentrated deliberateness of a man who has made a decision about what his body is allowed to do and is enforcing it through will alone. Reyes behind them. Backward. Covering the south end of the riverbed with her rifle while they moved. I didn't breathe for the 31 seconds it took them to reach the vehicle. The PKM fired once more. High. Either the gunner couldn't track the angle or Martinez had finally scared him enough. It didn't matter. They were at the vehicle. The door opened. Rains went in. Then, the SEAL. Then, Doyle. Reyes was the last one in. She was the last one in because she was covering the south bank until the door closed, and the door closed when she pulled it, and then we were moving. I exhaled. The vehicle smelled like gun smoke and fear sweat and the iron-specific smell of blood, which is not like the smell of anything else. Martinez looked back at me from the front seat. I looked back. Neither of us said anything. We didn't have to. We got back to Greystone at 0314. The generator was still down for the first 20 minutes, so the medical tent ran on a portable lamp that threw everything in a yellowish half-light, the kind of light that makes everyone look like they're from a different century. Rains went straight to the medical table. The base physician's assistant, a captain named Thurlow who'd been pulled out of sleep and arrived with one boot unlaced and the undeniable air of someone who was going to be professional about that, took over from Reyes without ceremony. She stepped back. That was the moment I really saw it, the stepping back, the way she took her hands off and became a support function instead of the primary, smooth and automatic as a relay baton. She'd been the thing standing between him and the next consequence for 45 minutes. Now she stepped back. She leaned against the tent pole. Her hands, I noticed, would not stop moving. They weren't shaking, not exactly. They were doing the same thing hands do after they've been doing very specific tasks for a long time, the muscle memory, running idle, fingers opening and closing on nothing. I brought her water. I don't know why. It wasn't a decision. I just found myself standing next to her with a water bottle, and she took it without looking at who'd handed it to her, drank half, and then looked at me. His O2 sat was dropping when we loaded, she said. Before we were even at the vehicle. He's talking, I said. Because he was, I could hear Rains, through the canvas partition, speaking in short sentences to Thurlow, the voice still that compressed professional thing but, with a different texture to it now. Lou, sir. Something that had been held very tight had let go a little. I know, she said. I can hear him. She finished the water. Set the bottle down. I dropped my notebook, she said. What? In the riverbed. My pocket notebook. She looked at the tent ceiling. Everything was in that notebook. The northwest wall positioning. The comms protocol. Everything I'd spent a week. I know the northwest wall, I said. I'll tell you again. She looked at me. There was something working behind her eyes that I couldn't read and didn't try to. Whatever it wasn't mine. Okay, she said. Doyle found us approximately 12 minutes later, which was enough time for us to have not said anything else meaningful and to have both acquired coffee from somewhere, the bad kind that had been sitting since before the mission, the kind that tasted like the inside of a thermos and approximately nothing else. He stood in front of Reyes and looked at her for a moment. Doyle's silences had different weights. This one was the heaviest I'd ever felt from him, which was saying something. Report, he said. She gave it to him. Clear, sequential, nothing extraneous, the needle decompression, the timing, the positioning, the handoff to Thurlow. 90 seconds of information that covered 45 minutes of work. Doyle listened without interruption, which he almost never did. When she finished, he looked at her for another moment. Then, he said, you went into a hot position to treat a casualty without confirmed suppression of the threat on your angle. Yes, Sergeant. That was a breach of SOP. Yes, Sergeant. If you'd gone down, we'd have had 2 casualties and no medic and a 6-minute response window from the nearest available. I know, Sergeant. He stopped. Looked at her. Don't interrupt me. She didn't blink. Then, finish. The tent was very quiet. I held my coffee cup very still and tried to occupy as little space as possible. Doyle looked at her for a long time. That's all, he said. Clean your kit. He walked out. Reyes looked at her hands. The muscle memory thing had stopped. They were just hands now, wrapped around a bad cup of coffee. What did that mean? She asked. I genuinely don't know, I said. But, from Doyle, that's better than most things he says. Rains made it. That part one want to be clear about because sometimes in these stories the important facts get lost in the details of everything around them. The needle decompression bought him the time Thurlow needed to stabilize the hemothorax. He was medevaced to Bagram within the hour, surgical intervention within 4 hours after that, and, by the following afternoon the SEAL team's comms operator, Chief Garrett, sent a message through channels to our base that said, Senior Chief Rains says thanks to the medic. He also says she's got a grip like a German auto mechanic. He means it as a compliment. Doyle read the message, folded it once, and put it on Reyes's bunk without comment. She found it there when she came off a 6-hour watch cycle and sat down, boots still on, reading it in the pale early light. I was pretending to sleep on the cot 3 feet away. I was not sleeping. She read it twice. Folded it back the way Doyle had. Put it in her pocket. Didn't say anything. I pretended to keep sleeping. 3 days later, Doyle ran her through a kit exercise. The whole squad watched, ostensibly doing maintenance, actually watching. He put her in a stripped-down scenario, simulated casualty, simulated pressure, a stopwatch and a running commentary in that quiet voice that found every hesitation and named it. He pushed the scenario into the 4th minute and added a simulated secondary threat, which meant she had to assess, adapt, and keep both hands in the work simultaneously. She did it in 11 minutes and 8 seconds. Doyle said nothing. Then, he ran it again. 9 minutes, 41 seconds. Again, Doyle said. Castillo, beside me, made a very small sound that was not quite a word but that I interpreted as the spiritual equivalent of oh, so that's what this is. She ran it 8 minutes and 53 seconds the third time. Doyle looked at the stopwatch. That's a passing time, he said. Which from Doyle was essentially a ticker-tape parade. He walked away. She put her hands on her knees and breathed for a moment. Then, straightened up. Looked around the squad area, meeting eyes in a way that wasn't defiance or performance. Just, I see you seeing me. Martinez nodded at her. Small nod. The kind that means something with Martinez. Castillo said, buy you a coffee? It's terrible. Heard it's like drinking a thermos, she said. Accurate, he said. They walked toward the chow area. I looked at the ground where she'd been running the scenario, the worn patch where she'd knelt, and thought about a notebook at the bottom of a dried riverbed 5 clicks east that had everything she needed in it, and how she hadn't needed it. 6 weeks after the riverbed, I found out the thing she'd said to Rains. Not from her. From Garrett, who'd been at the riverbed, who came through Greystone on an admin run and found me at the motor pool and said he wanted to say something and I said go ahead. Rains, in the 4th minute, when Reyes had put in the needle and his breathing changed and his hand had opened on the ground, he'd said something. He'd said, you're good. And she had said, without stopping her hands, without looking up, I know. Not arrogance. Not ego. The voice of someone who has made a calculation about what they're allowed to doubt right now, and the medical procedure is not on the list. The same way she hadn't flinched when Doyle dropped her in the dirt, not because it didn't hurt, but because the ground was just the next surface and you get up from surfaces. Garrett told me that. Then, he said, tell your medic senior chief said she's welcome on his team anytime. I told Reyes. She was eating, which she did with the same focused efficiency she brought to everything else. She looked up. Tell him same, she said. Went back to eating. There is a version of this story that ends with a speech. With Doyle calling the squad together and saying something. With someone putting an arm around someone else's shoulders. With a moment where the music swells in whatever version of this exists in your imagination. That's not this FOB. What happened was Tuesday became Wednesday became the week after, and Reyes was in 2nd squad, and 2nd squad went out on patrol, and came back, and went out again. She carried the trauma kit. She updated the inventory when things needed updating. She stopped writing everything in a notebook because she'd learned it, and you can't carry what you've learned in a notebook, you carry it in the hands that know what to do when the knowing is needed. Doyle stopped running the kit exercises. He started running them with the whole squad. She ran them alongside the rest of us, timing herself, timing Martinez when it was Martinez's turn, calling out the hesitations in the same flat voice he'd used on her. Not cruel. Productive. The grindstone voice. Martinez, after his first run, said, "You're meaner than Doyle." "My time was better than yours," she said. "That wasn't the point, my time was better than yours," she said again, and walked away, and he stood there for a second and then laughed in spite of himself, the real laugh, not the one people do to get along. That's the squad I knew. That's the squad she became part of. Not through a speech. Through 11 minutes mounting up, and a needle in a riverbed, and 8 minutes and 53 seconds on a stopwatch, and a cup of terrible coffee. I have 4 months left on this deployment. I write letters to my mother on Sunday mornings when I can, which is not every Sunday but more than none. I tell her about the food, which is consistent if not distinguished. I tell her about the cold nights and the desert heat that comes back every morning like it never left. I don't tell her about the riverbed. Not because it was too much. Because it's too specific. The kind of thing that sounds a certain way when you say it out loud to someone who hasn't been here, and then means something different to you than it does to them, and you spend the whole conversation managing the gap between those two meanings instead of actually saying the thing. The thing is this: a woman ate sand on her first day here and got up without wiping her face. 5 weeks later she kept a man breathing on the floor of a dried riverbed while people were trying to kill everyone in it. She did it with her hands and her training and a voice like a closing door. She stepped back when it was time to step back. She didn't need the notebook. She didn't need the speech. She needed the ground to get up from. Every soldier I've ever respected has known that. The ones who lasted, anyway. The ones who got up. Rains knew it. That's why he let go of her wrist. Doyle knew it. That's why he put the folded message on her bunk. I know it. That's why I brought her the water. Out here, that's how we say the things we don't say. You find the water. You bring it. That's all. Senior Chief Marcus Raines returned to full-duty status 83 days after the riverbed. I only know this because Garrett sent another message through channels. It said, "He's back. Worse than ever. Sends regards to 2nd Squad, FOB Greystone, and specifically to the medic with the German auto mechanic grip. He's going to buy her a beer someday. She should hold him to it." Doyle read it. Set it down. Looked at no one in particular. "Good," he said. Went back to work. This story is dedicated to the combat medics who go in last and come out last, whose job is to keep the mission alive by keeping the people alive, who do it with their hands and their training and a voice that leaves no room for anything except the next necessary thing.